All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into All in Aggies. It is Thursday, August 29th, as the rent bill approaches for me. And we are here for another episode, All in Aggies. Ben Peck to take you through it. Thank you so much for those of you, any of you who watched our first episode. I'll be honest, the first episode, kind of a test run, trying to get familiar with just not only solo hosting a show by myself for about 30 minutes, but some of the equipment, we're trying to get the audio worked out. It was peaking a little bit with the microphone. I've since learned how to implement clips into this show, because one thing that this show is going to be moving forward on a consistent basis, it is going to incorporate many video elements that are not just me sitting, talking, or talking with somebody else. We're going to kind of give you a fresh take, hearing from some of the players, athletes, what have you. We're still getting those kinks worked out yesterday, but now we've got a few sound bites we're going to hear from. We've got the SEC theme for SEC on ABC that came out. We'll take a look at that and discuss. And really, for most of the show, I just want to look ahead to this game against Notre Dame and talk about some of the things we will learn as we go through the week one matchup and what it could potentially tell us about the Aggies going beyond. We've also got a really cool story. I would put it on social media earlier this week from Torian York, talking about a tie he has to Notre Dame and that coaching staff over there for the Fighting Irish. But let us not delay any further. Let's talk about the Fighting Irish. And I think the number one headline on everybody's mind is the reunion for Mike Elko and Notre Dame, not just as the former defensive coordinator for a season for the Fighting Irish, but especially the quarterback on the other side, Riley Leonard. Obviously a dual threat guy, hurt you with his arms, with his legs. Mike Denbrock, I believe, the new offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, coming over from LSU. How is that offense going to look? How are they going to incorporate Riley Leonard? And to what extent are the Aggies and Mike Elko going to be able to use their familiarity with Riley Leonard to their advantage? But it could also go the other way. In fact, Mike Elko was sort of asked about that and, how he could maybe have an advantage preparing for Riley Leonard. But Elko, he kind of thought it could go maybe the other direction. Take a listen.
I would argue that he has more of an upper hand than we do, because he's probably a little bit more familiar with this defense than most quarterbacks we play. And not that it's the exact defense we ran at Duke. It's obviously blended together with what we've done and with what Coach Bateman brings to the table. But I think we don't have a ton of comfort as a program going against this offense. We haven't defended it for a single snap. I think 2 years going against some version of this defense that's similar to what he'll see Saturday night probably gives him a little bit more of an advantage than it does us.
So I thought that was interesting. Elko has talked about this reunion coming up for a while now. He briefly touched on it at SEC Media Days with Riley Leonard. I think that's probably accurate, to be fair, because, when you talk about one player's skill sets, maybe his tendencies, that pales in comparison to knowing for Riley Leonard the entire system and how it likes to be run. And as Coach mentioned, it's still going to be blended in with other elements and incorporating the talent you have at Texas A&M with the ferocious pass rush and the like. But the core elements of it, stay the same, as opposed to taking out a talented player, putting him in a whole new system. And what he can do, but how he's going to be allowed to do that remains a question. And it's going to be something much more difficult to discern early on. I think in order to limit Riley Leonard the best you can, obviously you got to keep him in the pocket. You need those guys on the defensive line, not just to get home, but really, I think more importantly, just contain him and not let him get out. Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart on the edge, Cassius Howell coming in, that difficult line of going after the quarterback, but not so with such disregard for your lane assignments that you break contain and let him get outside the pocket and make plays, similar to what Mr. Jaden Daniels did last year at LSU in this offense. Not to compare Riley Leonard to Jaden Daniels, but certainly something to be mindful of as we move forward. All right, we'll take a look at this next segment. I do want to mention, if you can tell, a little under the weather here with my voice, but we persist nonetheless. Another thing I think we're going to learn a lot about from Texas A&M with this upcoming game. What does not only how effective is the run game against this very stout defensive front for Notre Dame, but in what form does it take on with Texas A&M? You've got multiple options between Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, E.J. Smith, son of the great Emmitt Smith, of course, and then you've got Connor Wigman, who I would say is mobile enough to hurt you if you don't respect his legs. We'll touch a little bit more on Wigman in a sec, but this is what Elko had to say when he was asked sort of about the challenges presenting not just his offensive line going up against this defensive front, but still an offensive line altogether that is meshing and trying to come together as a unit with a very difficult test right off the bat to try to do that.
Hi, Mr. Elko. I'm Shalina Sabi with the Battalion, and I know you mentioned that Notre Dame was part of the top 10 defense last year. So going based off of that, how is offense going to implement all three backs against one of the better run defenses in college football?
Yeah, I think that'll be one of the challenges within this game. I think they don't give you a lot of soft surfaces to run the football. I think we're going to have to find some. We're going to have to make some with our offensive line. We're going to have to make some with our tailbacks. We've challenged them that's going to be the game a little bit. Some teams play you in these soft boxes where you have a lot of run angles. Notre Dame won't for the majority of the night, and so we're going to have to get creative in how we create opportunities for our backs to get some space and get going.
And I think part of that, as I mentioned, is going to be how you implement the quarterback run, how you implement some of these receivers on maybe, those touch passes, jet sweeps, keep the defense honest to where they can't play just straight downhill and go right at this offensive line, right at those backs, trying to get upfield. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting for sure. I think, there is talent on the offensive line, but so much of it depends on how that unit has come together in terms of the cohesion they have. 5 individually talented offensive linemen pales in comparison to maybe slightly less talented guys, but as a unit, they know their assignments, they know their jobs, and as they always say, it's kind of boring coach speak, but hat on a hat, open up space, create at least a one-on-one situation for your running back to, beat a linebacker or something, beat a guy, and potentially pick up a big gain. I do think another thing working in the Aggies' favor is they have a lot of options at running back. You can not only keep guys fresh and spell them out, but different skill sets within each of those guys. I think they are all pretty capable between Moss, Daniels, and Smith of catching the ball out of the backfield, making a factor, or making an impact in that regard, being a factor in the pass game, what I was trying to say there. And then, like I said, the X factor, I think for a big part of this season, what are we doing with Connor Wigman if you're Colin Klein? Because those Kansas State running quarterbacks, not that they were just pure burners and that's all they were doing, but they could certainly hurt you with their legs. They made you respect what they could do, thinking back to recent ones, Skylar Thompson, Will Howard, Avery Johnson, a lot of buzz around him. So we'll see. But Connor Wigman has had injuries. I wouldn't necessarily say injury prone because most of them have been kind of like last year. That was just a clean one play disaster, which led to the injury. It's not like he's, he plays, he gets banged up, he misses some time, he comes back, he's banged up again. He's just constantly battling this sort of thing. That was kind of a clean break in that sense. So I think, especially depending on how confident and comfortable you feel in your backup quarterbacks, that, if Wigman has to go out for maybe a play or so, obviously you want number 15 to stay healthy, but you want to maximize what he can do, not only for the running backs, open up that passing game, and we'll see what the Aggies can do. All right, moving along now. Let's talk about the passing game and the receivers. Interesting dynamic where I don't think, as this question from Travis Brown will allude to, there's not a clear, decisive, like number one, at least in our minds, guy that is clearly going to be the bell cow in the passing game, but rather you have a lot of very good options, maybe similar to the running back situation. And then at the tight end spot, Trey Watson, Donovan Green and those guys. So you've got options there as well. And ability to spread the ball all over the field, not just within the receiving corps, but incorporating some of those other skill position players. So let's hear from Mr. Travis Brown asking Mike Elko about the idea of having or finding a number one receiver for the Aggies and what that could potentially do for them moving forward over the course of the year.
Hi, Mr. Elko.
And when you look at wide receivers, does it behoove an offense to have a guy who is the guy, the number one, or is it better to have it spread across, or does that not really matter when you look at that from wide receiver perspective?
Yeah, I think it's obviously nice to have a guy who's a number one, because that means you've got a guy that commands attention, and we'll find out Saturday night, but I believe we have that. And then if that guy commands attention, then that creates opportunities for other people. If they don't give him the respect he deserves, or leave him more single cover, then he can take over a game. And I think that's the benefit of having a number one. But you need more than that, because if it's just one and it's just one guy, that becomes a little bit too easy for teams to take away. And so, I think our wide receiver group is real excited to go out there Saturday night and kind of show what they've become, and so we're excited to watch them do it.
Okay, interesting tidbit I picked up from that. I don't know that this was deliberate, but Coach Elko alluded to, we think we have that guy, and if you have that guy, he can take attention away from other people and open up some things. He didn't say we have multiple of those guys. Not to say any one of them are not capable of emerging as a top talent, but rather I think if you didn't have an idea that one of those guys was going to take the reins and take the leadership to be that primary target, you would say, well, we have instead of a go-to receiver, we have multiple go-to receivers, that sort of thing. I don't know if that was just how he phrased it or if that was deliberate, but the way it came across to me is they might have an idea that one of these guys is going to be a really big featured target and kind of emerge as a primary playmaker in this passing game, whether that be, three starters listed: Noah Thomas, Jade Walker, and Cyrus Allen, the transfer from Louisiana Tech. So we shall see. I think Noah Thomas is certainly a threat in the red zone. That would be my primary objective for him. Not objective, but as someone who observes the team, that would be the thing that I would hope to see from him if the Aggies are going to perform at their highest level. Jade Walker, I think is versatile, can make plays all over the place. And then Cyrus Allen, we'll see where he can kind of find his niche in there. And I think should be mentioned, Moose Muhammad and Micah Tease coming in off the bench as well, in the slot or on the outside, to see what those guys can do. We know, what Moose can do in terms of just pure catch-making ability. So he could factor in the red zone as well. And then, like I mentioned, the tight ends, the running backs, how it all comes together, and we shall see once we get to Saturday. All right, working on here through All in Aggies. Again, apologies for the voice. I'm a little I just woke up with like a little phlegm in my throat. I don't know what's going on, but we persist nonetheless. Let's talk about this Torian York anecdote he mentioned on Monday. He was asked about, do you have any ties with Notre Dame? Big time program coming into College Station. He alluded to, now he'll tell the story that when he was at Temple in high school, and I want to talk about this after the fact as well. I think this goes to a broader lesson we can get with recruiting and how we consume that information as college football fans. Al Washington, when Torian York was at Temple High School, was the linebackers coach at Ohio State. They had some sort of relationship as they went on through that process, and I'll let Torian explain the rest of how that played out.
I don't have too many ties. I never really talked to anybody from Notre Dame, never went on a visit there. But Al Washington was the linebacker coach at Ohio State whenever I was in high school. So I have a relationship with him. You know, hopefully I get to catch up with him after the game because he, just going into a quick story real quick. My junior year, I didn't really know what was going to happen with me when it came to recruiting, and I went to Ohio State, did an unofficial visit. They invited me up there, and then he came to Temple and saw me. We sat in his office, and he told me, like, you know, man, I don't know if we're going to offer you at Ohio State, but what I do know is that you're a Division I football player. And at the time, I just came off my junior season. I had 2 offers, Texas Southern and North Texas, and that gave me all the hope in the world, you know. So I really appreciate Al Washington a ton, and I know my mom does as well. So we'll be able to hopefully catch up with him after the game.
How do you not love Torrin York? How do you not love Torrin York, whether you're an Aggie or not? How do you not root for that guy? You know, and like I said, I think his story mentions we can learn a few things from his story. Number one, the impact you can have on somebody in instilling belief and confidence, and how important those things are in terms of being able to carry over, you know, your success on to another level, whether you're at the level that you're at, like still in high school, trying to play better, or jumping up to sort of the next stage, as was the case with Torrin York jumping up to Texas A&M last year. Let's never forget that. Great lesson there, life lesson. And then number two, the recruiting rankings and the stars in the aggregate matter, and they're important. But don't over focus on any one particular guy's ranking, especially I think when you're talking about 4 stars and 3 stars, because I believe if you go back and you look at what the composite ratings were for that 2023 recruiting class, Torrin York was towards the bottom for Texas A&M on paper. You know, he's a guy who came in late in the process, late recruiting surge from Texas A&M to get him on campus under Jimbo Fisher, give him credit where it's due, and came in, got to work. And a thing that those stars have a trouble measuring is what's going on up here, and your mindset, your mentality, and your professionalism. And Torrin York, I mean, obviously, it goes without saying, took over the job, one of the best freshmen in the country, will be one of the best sophomores in the country, leading what should be a pretty good defense. And so I guess I just say all that to say, don't count anyone out until we see what they do. Don't put too much on a kid and say it's guaranteed that he's going to perform at this level because this is how many stars he's got, or this is what he was rated coming out of high school. Let it play out. Let's just all take a deep breath. Let's, you know, consume these things as they happen. And we can sort of make projections, but not predictions. Let's try to do that. And so Torrin York doing great stuff and a great story there. So I do hope Mr. York and the family will be able to catch up with Al Washington after the game. That'll be pretty cool to see if they can make that happen as well. All right, now let's talk about it. The SEC on ABC. As you know, ABC has picked up the SEC broadcasting rights. Oh, we're going to... Had a little snafu there. All right, let's start this over. As you know, the SEC has agreed to a new broadcasting deal with ESPN and ABC to become the primary broadcaster. And what has been making the waves on Twitter is this new promo, the new theme music put out by ESPN for this SEC season. And the reviews have been a little less than flattering. I'm going to play the video they tweeted. It's about a minute and a half. We'll come back and discuss after this. Okay. So let's talk about this. I think a phenomena in media that is prevalent, especially with broadcast partners, is just kind of reinventing the wheel when we don't need to. I know this is like a throwback, so maybe not the best example, but like just because you can do something doesn't mean we have to. Okay. Just because we have this throwback music doesn't mean we have to bring it out into the modern age. If that feels like throwback music and not in the good way, like Indiana and NBC, there's maybe a reason for it. And I think it could work if the visuals kind of matched up with it. But like from what we saw there, and I don't know if that's, they were showing off all sorts of different graphic systems that I think are going to be shown throughout the year. So it's not to say that's going to be like the open every time, but assuming the visuals are going to stay relatively within that realm, it felt like a Monday Night Football broadcast. And the music felt more quaint and like kind of old timey to where, if you want to use visuals and the kind of camera shots, like I would think something along the lines of like an NFL Films where it's still high quality, but it's, it's not super crisp and modern and all this stuff. It just doesn't mesh well together. And it's gonna be tough. It was already gonna be tough to see the CBS Sports college football theme music go over to the Big Ten, and to hear that and not see an SEC game come on after that. But then to go here, like, just use the regular ESPN music. It's fine. Like, again, just because you can go back to this throwback doesn't mean we have to. Listen, I will say I don't think it's the absolute worst thing in the world. I don't want to overdo it. I know we're making a segment on it here, but I think it goes to a trend of like, number one, creativity is dead. We seem to have trouble as a society with movies and everything else coming up with fresh new ideas. And number two, when we do try to come up with new ideas, like we miss the boat a lot of times on what's needed. Like I always think whenever there's a championship level event, Super Bowl or whatnot, and I think CBS is doing this, where they always update the graphics for like the championship game. They unveil this new graphics package that carries over into the next season. It's like the one we had before was fine. Or if you want to do it for the championship game and then put it to bed or save it as like, that's our championship game graphics and, you'll see it next year. Maybe that's one thing. Like, I think they do that. Maybe they don't do it anymore. I think they kind of did that with March Madness. Kind of saved it for that. But since it was a joint venture between CBS and Turner, but I don't know, man. It doesn't fire me up. Like the visuals look great. And I think that fires me up. Like, I'd be ready to see some SEC football on that. But then it almost feels like you're watching the game on your TV and you have your TV muted and you're listening to something on your laptop as it's playing, and the two things don't match up together. So that's my overall thoughts on that. Let me know am I crazy? Let me know what you think. Does it slap? I know Marty Smith liked it. And now, granted, he works for Mickey Mouse. So to be understood, love Marty Smith, by the way. It's not a shot at him, but there could be disagreement on this. Reasonable minds can differ. Let me know what you think. All right. As we get going here, I did want to give a shout out to my sort of news and notes, little tidbits at the end, as we're going to try to do. As we mentioned, Arthur Rinderknecht at the U.S. Open, we were talking about him yesterday, having defeated Chris Eubanks in the first round, played Andrei Rublev, the Russian, in the second round. Absolute heartbreaker for the former Aggie All-American Rinderknecht. He went 5 sets in the opening win over Eubanks, came from behind, I think down 2-1. In this one, he's up 2 sets against Rublev, and Rublev comes back to rally, I believe 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, or 6-1, 6-2, 6-2. Either way, I think maybe back-to-back 5-set matches catching up with Rinderknecht. And if you don't know, if you're not a big tennis junkie like I am to some degree, Rublev, top 10 player in the world. Like, this really could have been a chance for Rinderknecht to break through, and, we'll see what he does. A chance to be in the round of 32, but it goes by the wayside there. Also, do want to mention, I did see, Buddy Johnson on the Cowboys roster for the NFL, Damani Richardson on the 53-man roster, but Richardson has since, last I saw, has been waived. So Just wanted to acknowledge, I know that that stuff's going on. I'm kind of holding off on the whole Aggies in the NFL until we really get to week 1 because so much can change so quickly. I feel sick for a guy like Damani to think you're going to make the 53-man roster and then to get waived. I know that's the business. That's how it goes. But I didn't want it to feel like we were just totally ignoring that on this show. I do see that stuff coming in, but especially for guys who are, trying to make a 53-man roster for the first time or first couple times, just kind of wait and see. Let's get to week 1, see how it goes. All right. I think that's all we got for you on Aggie Sport or on All in Aggies. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, tell your friends. We've only got 2 subscribers at the time we're filming this. We just started. I haven't promoted it, but let people know about it. Let's get to 12 subscribers by game day. How about we do that? And also want to give a programming note as far as sort of my plans, at least for the week. I don't think I'll be doing a show on Friday unless we have some college game day related content. If we get to talk to that crew and hear what they have to say, I'll try to put something up on that if that happens. And Saturday, I will try to have some stuff game day early on, really college game day related, to kind of take you inside Aggie Park, that vibe, less focused on the game because I know people are going to be busy running around, but at least get that out in the morning so you can soak that in and see what it's all about. And then we'll recap the game on Sunday, maybe Saturday night if something crazy happens, and we just got to talk about it. All right, that's all we got for you. All in Aggies, Ben Peck. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and have a great weekend. We will see you at least on Saturday.